Welcome to the Voice of St. Anthony Parish from Allston, Massachusetts, right here on WROL 950 AM 100.3 FM. And you can also hear us at CatholicAudiomedia.com. That's CatholicAudiomedia.com. And you can find us on your favorite podcast platform. So definitely check us out. Just look for Catholic Audio Media, all one word. Or if you're on Spotify, it's Catholic Audio Media, 3 words. So anyway, we're talking about how we fight evil. And we fight evil by doing good, as St. Paul teaches. And as I always explain, I have said this many times about read the writings of Walter Wink. Because remember, the people who are trying to silence us as people of faith, especially the Catholics, are using Saul Alinsky's rules for radicals, which calls its adherents to emulate the devil to get what you want. So they're going to follow that path. And that's exactly what they're doing against the church and other entities and other groups. So we understand that. But at the same time, we've got to look at how do we respond in a way that the Lord calls us to when we fight evil by doing good. And I explained to you the other day how this is what Father Jerzy Popiełuszko taught when he was preaching in support of the Solidarity movement. Well, one of the things we want to look at is when, how do we work with some of the issues we're dealing with? And I wanted to speak specifically about rioting that happened in Philadelphia last week. Now, keep in mind that there was a movement to stage a coup of our church. One of the people who was involved actually is one of the gurus for one of the catechetical companies in the Catholic Church, in case you didn't know that. But he was one of the major leaders. But one of the centers of this was Philadelphia. So we kind of see, as I was saying in a homily recently, that what's the result of the silencing of the church? When you take God away, you get chaos. So in Philadelphia last week, there was looting and rioting over in a reality where a police officer shot a person of color. We don't know the story of what happened beforehand, but we know apparently that the police officer said the man showed a knife and he shot him. But the reality is that the man was inside a car. He was in the driver's seat of the car. He had just parked the car, which was in a chase, by the way. So the police officer were chasing him. He was parked in the car. He was in the driver's seat, and the police came right after. So it's not like he was parked for 15 minutes waiting for them. The police officer, with his gun out of his holster, holding his gun in a firing position, running around the car, he yells at the man, show your hands. And he said, show your hands or I will shoot, or words to that effect. And then right away he started shooting him. Now, according to the report of the police officer, there was a foldable knife that the man had in his hands. And so the police officer took that as a threat. So he shot through the closed driver's side window and killed him. The whole scenario of that, him getting out of the car, the man parking his car, but that was done. So him getting out of the car, which was seconds later, the police officer running around to the driver's side while yelling at him, telling him to show his hands, and shooting him couldn't have been more than 10 seconds. And I think it was a considerable less. So last week on the 26th, a judge dropped all charges against the police officer. And people responded by rioting and looting. Now, why were they rioting and looting? The main reason why people were rioting and looting. Well, the reason is that's how they are expressing their anger and their frustration. I'm not saying it's the right thing to do by any stretch of the imagination. But this is what they're saying, and they're communicating, obviously, through their anger that, again, they feel that they have no power. When rioting and looting happens, I mean, there were people going to get involved in it just to steal things. But when it happens to that level, it's a sign that people are speaking out, we have no power. And this is how we're going to express our power. Now, the interesting thing is, remember, I am in the Navy, so I was in the Navy, rather. And do keep in mind that I was trained on how to work a security force for the Navy commands I was on. And we were instructed, number one, never pull your gun out of your firearm out of a holster unless you're going to use it. So if you pull it out, you better use the firearm. If you pull out the firearm, you better use it. So if you have no intention of using it, don't pull it out of your holster. The second thing was never shoot to kill, always shoot to maim. And we were protecting military hardware. Understand that. So when we understand all that, now that's the military. I'm not a police officer. I can't speak for police officers. I can't speak for the situation. I can only speak what we were trained in the military. And I never had to pull my weapon out of my holster. I'll talk more on the other side of the break. You're listening to St. Anthony Overnight from St. Anthony Parish in Allston, Massachusetts. We'll be right back.
Don't forget to tell others where they can find our program. You can hear us on WROL 950 AM and WROLradio.com at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, Monday through Friday. We then podcast the program on your favorite podcast platform and at CatholicAudiomedia.com. That's CatholicAudiomedia.com. You can also hear us at our parish website, that's St. AnthonyAlston.org. That is StAnthonyAlston.org. Let others know where you can find us and spread the word about the Catholic Audio Media podcast.
We're back, and we're talking about this moment that happened in Philadelphia where there were riots and looting that broke out after a police officer, all charges were dropped against him in regards to this shooting. And I described to you the shooting. If you look it up, you can find it on YouTube. Know that it is graphic. So now the question is, how do we respond? Now, one of the first things people will say is, well, that's what those people do. You know what? There's nothing theologically correct about that. And people will say that, even priests will say that. That's wrong. There's nothing theologically correct about that. All of that, everything that happens is a symptom of something. The looting and the rioting for, some people are just going to get involved in it for the sake of getting involved in it. But other people are expressing an anger. They're saying they're expressing a message. What is the message they are expressing? And other people are expressing a reality that if we turn around and we dismiss that, all we're saying is that we don't necessarily believe that all people are created by God with the same amount of dignity. So you understand that. And we're called to stand up for the dignity of a human person. So in light of that, this is where, again, we fight evil by doing good. What message is being communicated, and how is it being communicated in such a way that we're starting to lead people to understand that God is trying to teach them of his love and save them? And that's for all the people in our audience, regardless of who it is. And that's the message we have to communicate. But if we're not communicating that message, number one, we're not doing the will of God. And number one, the fruit of that will be some of what we see. If we take God away from a scenario, what we replace him is chaos. If we remove God, we will bring in chaos, or chaos will come in on its own. And we understand that. So our role is to do what is important and necessary to make sure we're communicating the reality and the love and the call of God to as many people as possible, even in difficult situations like that. Now, someone in the Archdiocese of Philadelphia will say, no, there's no way we are going to leave churches open. But the Sunday after 9/11, the Cathedral of the Holy Cross, which holds 2,000 people, was packed, illustrating that in times like that, people need to be people of prayer. They need places where they can pray. And so it is important to keep churches open. You know how much I'm very much into that. So that's an issue when people need to pray and to talk to God about their anger and stuff. Maybe it wasn't the right time to do that night because of the rioting, but maybe it was. And one of the things to know, if we're going to seek to do good in response to evil, then we have to take risks. One of the things, as you know, I really frustrates me is when I come to a church that is locked. I really hate that. And St. Anthony's has an open door during the daytime, so that people can go in and pray. So I get really frustrated and angry with people with churches that are locked. And people say, well, back in the old day, we didn't have to lock our churches. No, you don't have to now. The reason why they're locked is because you choose to. If you leave them open as a place to pray, that's so essential. And that's always where I've been. And one of the examples I like to show is you'd be surprised how many churches are open in Manhattan on a regular basis. I take trains, so from Penn Station all the way up to Times Square, you're going to find at least a couple churches open, including St. Patrick's Cathedral. So we look at that and we understand we have to fight evil by doing good, but we have to do that in a way that leads people to understand their dignity in God and leads people to understand that God is calling them. So I don't know what happened in churches in the Diocese of Philadelphia after all that happened, but it'll be interesting to find out. We'll talk more tomorrow. Have a blessed day.
I want to call your attention to Catholic TV, which offers great faith-filled, family-friendly programming 24 hours a day. You can find your cable channel at www.getcatholictv.com, and you can watch online on the free apps or check out the YouTube channel. Daily Mass, Rosaries, the Divine Mercy Chaplet, and the Our Lady of Perpetual Help Novena are all available online and on demand. Check out catholictv.com. If you would like to support our program, please consider a donation to St. Anthony Parish in Allston, Massachusetts. There are several ways to consider this. One is to purchase any of our merchandise, which you can find at the shopping tab at CatholicAudiomedia.com. That's CatholicAudiomedia.com. There are coffee mugs there. There's also my latest book, Encounter Christ in Your Humanity, all of which you can find at the shopping tab at CatholicAudiomedia.com. You can also donate to the show directly through either the Donate tab, also at CatholicAudiomedia.com, or by sending a donation through the U.S. Postal Service with your questions and comments at 43 Holton Street, Allston, Massachusetts, 02134. That's St. Anthony Parish, 43 Holton Street, Allston, Massachusetts, 02134. Finally, the best way you can support our parish is to attend Mass on Sundays at 10 o'clock and be a part of our parish. We thank you for any support you would like to give to St. Anthony Parish in Allston, Massachusetts, the sponsoring parish for this media outreach to Catholics and other Christians in the WROL, WEZE, and podcast listening audience. In Cristo vivimos.